Hello and welcome to the Sleepy Physicist. I'm so glad you found your way here. Whether you're settling in for the evening, curled up somewhere comfortable, or simply seeking a moment of quiet contemplation in your day. This is our gentle corner of the universe where the most profound mysteries of physics unfold at a pace that lets your mind truly absorb their wonder. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey that might just reshape how you think about the very ground beneath your feet, the air around you, and the moment you're experiencing right now. We're going to explore one of the most startling possibilities in modern physics, something so fundamental that it challenges the very foundation of reality itself. Here's something to consider as we begin. Right now, as you listen to these words, you believe you're sitting somewhere in space, existing at a particular moment in time. You can feel your body occupying a specific location, and you're aware that seconds are ticking by, carrying you forward through time. It seems so obvious, so undeniably real. But what if I told you that space and time, the very fabric that Einstein showed us, was woven together into space-time itself, might not actually exist at all? What if the stage upon which every star, planet and particle performs its cosmic dance is nothing more than an illusion, a kind of elaborate magic trick performed by something far more fundamental and strange? This isn't science fiction or philosophical speculation. This is where the cutting edge of theoretical physics is leading us, and it's both beautiful and deeply unsettling. Before we drift into this profound exploration, if you find these gentle journeys through the cosmos helpful for reflection, rest, or simply satisfying your curiosity about the universe, I'd be grateful if you considered subscribing to the channel. It helps more curious minds find their way here, and I always love knowing where in the world these ideas are traveling. Feel free to let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is in your corner of existence. Now, let's begin our quiet voyage into the possibility that everything you think you know about space and time might be wonderfully, mysteriously wrong. To understand why physicists are beginning to question the reality of space-time itself, we need to start with a story about two of our most successful theories so powerful they've reshaped our understanding of everything from the smallest particles to the largest structures in the cosmos. On one hand, we have Einstein's general relativity, that elegant description of gravity as the curvature of space-time. Picture a bowling ball placed on a stretched rubber sheet, creating dimples and curves that guide the path of marbles rolled nearby. This is how Einstein taught us to think about massive objects bending the fabric of space and time, creating what we experience as gravitational attraction. It's a theory of breathtaking beauty that has passed every test we've thrown at it, from predicting the bending of light around massive objects to the recent detection of gravitational waves rippling through the cosmos. But then we have quantum mechanics, our extraordinarily precise description of the microscopic world. Here, particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed, reality becomes probabilistic rather than deterministic, and the act of measurement itself shapes what we find. Quantum mechanics has given us lasers, computers, and medical imaging devices. It's arguably the most successful theory in the history of science, predicting phenomena with accuracy that would make even the most precise clockmaker weep with envy. Yet these two pillars of modern physics, when brought together, create a problem so profound that it keeps theoretical physicists awake at night. They simply refuse to play nicely with each other. General relativity describes a smooth, continuous space-time, while quantum mechanics suggests reality is fundamentally grainy and uncertain at the smallest scales. It's like trying to write a symphony where half the orchestra is playing in one key and half in another. The result is not harmony, but chaos. For decades, physicists have been searching for a theory of quantum gravity, something that would unify these two descriptions of reality. But what if the solution isn't to force them together? What if the answer is far more radical? What if space-time itself, the very arena in which both theories operate, is not fundamental at all, but something that emerges from deeper, more basic processes? This is where our story takes a turn toward the genuinely extraordinary. Imagine discovering that what you thought was solid ground beneath your feet was actually just patterns of waves on an ocean you never knew existed. That's essentially what a growing number of physicists are proposing about the nature of space and time. Let me take you on a journey to the smallest scales imaginable, far smaller than atoms, smaller than protons and neutrons, down to what physicists call the Planck scale. At this level, roughly 10 to the 35 meters, something remarkable happens. The smooth fabric of space-time that Einstein described begins to break down into something far stranger. According to a theory called loop quantum gravity, space itself has a structure, a kind of quantum weave made up of tiny loops and nodes, like an incredibly fine mesh. Picture a piece of fabric that looks perfectly smooth from a distance, but when you examine it closely with a powerful magnifying glass, you discover it's actually woven from individual threads. These threads of space are so small that even our most powerful microscopes could never hope to see them, yet they might be the true foundation of reality. In this picture, what we experience as the continuous flow of space and time is really more like a movie screen. When you watch a film, you see smooth motion, but the movie is actually composed of individual frames played so quickly that your brain stitches them together into the illusion of continuous movement. Similarly, the smooth space-time of our everyday experience might emerge from the rapid interactions of these quantum loops, creating the illusion of continuity from something that is fundamentally discrete. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. In loop quantum gravity, space and time don't exist independently at the most fundamental level. Instead, the theory describes reality in terms of processes, events, and relationships. It's a language of becoming rather than being, suggesting that existence itself is more like a verb than a noun. Think about it this way. When you describe your day, you don't typically say, "I was at 9 a.m., then I was at 10 a.m. Instead, you describe what happened, what you did, how one moment led to another. Loop quantum gravity suggests that reality itself might be more like your story of the day, a sequence of events and processes, rather than objects moving through a pre-existing container of space and time. This represents a profound shift in how we think about existence itself. Instead of asking, "Where is something?" or "When did it happen?" we might need to ask, "What process is occurring? And how does it relate to other processes?" It's as if we've been trying to understand reality by looking at still photographs, when we should have been watching the movie all along. But loop quantum gravity isn't the only path leading us away from fundamental space-time. There's another approach, perhaps even more mind-bending, that emerges from string theory and something called the holographic principle. Imagine you're looking at a hologram, one of those shimmering images that seems three-dimensional but is actually encoded on a two-dimensional surface. No matter how realistic the 3D image appears, all the information needed to create it is stored in the flat hologram. Now, what if our entire universe works the same way? The holographic principle suggests that everything happening in a three-dimensional volume of space can be completely described by information stored on the two-dimensional boundary of that volume. It's as if the universe is like a cosmic hologram, with all of reality encoded on some distant surface, and what we experience as three-dimensional space is really just a projection of that more fundamental lower-dimensional information. This idea gained tremendous support from the discovery of something called the ADS-CFT correspondence by physicist Juan Maldacena. This mathematical relationship shows that certain theories of quantum gravity in curved spacetime are exactly equivalent to quantum field theories without gravity on the boundary of that space. It's like discovering that a complex three-dimensional sculpture and a two-dimensional painting are actually the same thing, just viewed from different perspectives. What makes this truly remarkable is the role of quantum entanglement in creating the illusion of space. When particles become entangled, they remain connected in a way that seems to transcend ordinary spatial separation. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance, but in the holographic picture, entanglement might be the very mechanism by which space itself is woven together. Picture two children holding opposite ends of a long rope, spinning it to create waves. The waves travel along the rope, but the rope itself is what allows the waves to exist. Similarly, quantum entanglement might be the rope that allows space to exist, with what we think of as spatial separation being more like waves of entanglement travelling through a network of quantum connections. This brings us to one of the most profound ideas in modern physics, first proposed by the legendary physicist John Wheeler. He called it from bit, the idea that all of reality, every particle, every force, even space-time itself, emerges from something far more basic: information. Wheeler envisioned a universe where the fundamental constituents aren't tiny particles or energy fields, but bits of information, like the zeros and ones in a computer program. Just as complex software can emerge from simple binary code, perhaps the entire cosmos emerges from an underlying informational structure. This might sound abstract, but consider your own experience right now. The words you're hearing, the thoughts you're thinking, the sensations you're feeling, all of these are really patterns of information being processed by your brain. The electrical impulses racing through your neurons don't inherently contain meaning, yet somehow they give rise to your rich, subjective experience of consciousness. Could reality itself work the same way, with meaningless bits of quantum information somehow giving rise to the meaningful experience of existing in space and time? Recent work in quantum gravity has made Wheeler's vision surprisingly concrete. Researchers have developed models where space-time emerges from networks of quantum information, like a cosmic internet where the connections between nodes of data create the illusion of spatial and temporal relationships. In these models, what we think of as distance isn't really about space at all, but about how much information you need to transmit between different parts of the network. Two regions that are highly entangled, sharing lots of quantum information, appear close together in the emergent space-time. Regions with little shared information appear far apart. It's as if the universe is constantly computing itself into existence, with space and time being the interface through which we experience this cosmic calculation. But if space-time really is emergent, if it's not fundamental but arises from something deeper, then we need to completely rethink some of our most basic assumptions about reality: distance, duration, causality, the very notion of here and now. All of these familiar concepts might be approximations, useful illusions that help us navigate a reality that is far stranger than we ever imagined. Think about dreams for a moment. In a dream, you experience space and time. You move from place to place, events unfold in sequence, yet none of it corresponds to actual spatial or temporal relationships in the physical world. The space and time of your dream are emergent properties of the neural activity in your sleeping brain. Could our waking experience of space-time be similar, emerging from the neural activity of some deeper quantum reality? This is where our exploration becomes both thrilling and vertiginous. We're not just questioning the nature of space and time, we're questioning the nature of existence itself. If space-time is emergent, then the theatre in which all the dramas of physics play out might itself be just another actor in a deeper, more fundamental performance. And this brings us to an even more profound question, one that will guide us through the next part of our journey. If space and time aren't real, if they're just emergent illusions arising from more basic processes, then what does that mean for consciousness, for the experience of being you, existing here and now? Are you, like space-time itself, an emergent pattern arising from something more fundamental? These questions lead us to the very edge of our current understanding, to places where physics meets philosophy and where the boundaries between science and wonder begin to dissolve. The implications are so profound that they challenge not just our theories about the universe, but our understanding of what it means to exist at all. As we drift deeper into this contemplation of emergent reality, let's pause for a moment and consider something wonderfully paradoxical. Right now, as you listen to these words, scientists around the world are spending billions of dollars and decades of their lives trying to measure space-time with extraordinary precision. They're detecting gravitational waves that stretch and compress space by distances smaller than a fraction of a proton's width. They're timing the arrival of light from distant galaxies to understand how the universe expanded over cosmic history. They're mapping the cosmic microwave background radiation to see the fingerprints of space-time's earliest moments. And yet, if we're right about space-time being emergent, all of these incredibly sophisticated measurements might be like trying to understand the internet by carefully examining the pixels on your computer screen. The pixels are real, they convey information, but they're not the fundamental reality. They're just how the deeper computational processes manifest to our senses. This creates a beautiful irony. The more precisely we measure space-time, the more evidence we gather that it might not be fundamental at all. It's like spending years perfecting your ability to read the shadows on the wall of Plato's cave, becoming an expert in shadow interpretation, only to gradually realize that the shadows are projections of a richer, more complex reality behind you. Consider the recent breakthroughs in gravitational wave astronomy. When LIGO detected the collision of two black holes over 1 billion years ago, the space-time ripples that reached Earth stretched and compressed our detectors by distances so tiny that they defy imagination. Yet in the emergent space-time picture, what we detected might not have been ripples in space itself, but changes in the pattern of quantum entanglement that gives rise to our perception of space. It's rather like watching waves on the surface of the ocean. The waves are real phenomena. They carry energy. They can knock you over if you're not careful. But the waves aren't the ocean itself. They're disturbances moving through the deeper medium of water. Similarly, gravitational waves might be disturbances moving through the deeper medium of quantum information, manifesting to us as changes in space-time, because that's how our measuring devices are designed to interpret reality. Now let's explore what emergence actually means in the context of space-time, because it's a concept that can be both illuminating and deeply mysterious. Think about consciousness for a moment, your own awareness of existing, of having thoughts and experiences. Consciousness emerges from the activity of billions of neurons in your brain. yet no single neuron is conscious. The neurons themselves are made of cells, which are made of molecules, which are made of atoms, none of which have any awareness whatsoever. Yet somehow, from this hierarchy of non-conscious components, your rich inner life emerges. You experience colours, emotions, memories, the sense of being someone, somewhere, somewhen. This is emergence in action, the appearance of properties and phenomena at higher levels of organisation that simply don't exist at the fundamental level. In the same way, space-time might emerge from quantum processes that have no spatial or temporal properties themselves, just as wetness emerges from H2O molecules that aren't individually wet, and just as the meaning of a sentence emerges from letters that have no meaning by themselves, space and time might emerge from quantum information that exists in a realm beyond space and time. But here's where the analogy becomes even more intriguing. Unlike consciousness emerging from neural activity, where we can at least point to the brain as the physical substrate, the emergence of space-time suggests that there's no place where this emergence happens. The emergence itself creates the very notion of place. It's like asking where a dream takes place. The dream feels spatial. You move through dream landscapes, but the dream doesn't happen in space. It happens in patterns of neural activity that create the experience of space. Similarly, our universe might be like a cosmic dream, with space and time being the way quantum reality experiences itself. This leads us to consider what philosophers call the hard problem of space-time emergence. Even if we can show mathematically how space and time arise from quantum processes, there remains the mystery of why there's something it's like to exist in space and time. Why does the universe have an inside, a subjective experience of spatial and temporal relationships? Some physicists have begun to wonder if consciousness and space-time might be two sides of the same coin. Just as consciousness emerges from complex information processing in brains, perhaps space-time emerges from complex information processing in the quantum realm. And just as your consciousness creates a unified experience from the chaos of neural activity, perhaps the cosmos creates the unified experience of space-time from the chaos of quantum information. This brings us to one of the most profound shifts in thinking that emergent space-time theories require. Instead of thinking of space and time as containers in which things happen, we need to think relationally. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything exists only in relationship to everything else. Consider your own identity. You're not just you in some abstract sense, you're someone's child. Perhaps someone's parent, someone's friend, someone's neighbour. You exist in relationships, professional, personal, cultural and biological. Strip away all these relationships, and what's left? Similarly, in a relational view of space-time, particles and fields don't exist in space and time. They exist in relationship to each other, and what we call space and time are simply ways of describing those relationships. This is rather like the difference between thinking of music as notes placed in time versus thinking of music as relationships between sounds. A melody isn't really notes happening at specific temporal coordinates. It's a pattern of relationships, rising and falling, tension and resolution, rhythm and silence. The beauty of music emerges from these relationships, not from the individual notes themselves. In loop quantum gravity, this relational thinking becomes mathematically precise. The theory describes reality in terms of quantum relationships, networks of connections that don't exist anywhere because they create the very notion of where. It's a universe of pure relationship, where the relator, the things being related, are themselves nothing but nodes in a web of connections. But what does this mean for your direct experience right now. If space and time are relational, then your sense of being here now, listening to these words, is really a description of your relationships to everything else in the cosmos. Your here is defined by your relationships to the Earth, the Sun, the galaxy. Your now is defined by your relationships to the events happening around you and the memories you carry within you. In a strange way, this makes you far more connected to the universe than you might have imagined. You're not a separate entity occupying a small region of space for a brief moment of time. You're a pattern of relationships that extends throughout the cosmos, a unique perspective on the universal web of connections that is reality itself. While these ideas might sound purely theoretical, physicists are beginning to create laboratory analogues of emergent spacetime. Using ultra-cold atoms trapped by laser light, researchers can create quantum systems where something very much like space emerges from the entanglement patterns between atoms. Imagine a group of dancers, each one connected to several others by invisible threads. As they move, the tensions in the threads create a kind of geometry, defining distances and relationships. In the laboratory, atoms play the role of the dancers, and quantum entanglement plays the role of the threads. As the entanglement patterns change, a kind of emergent space appears in the quantum system. These experiments are still in their early stages, but they offer the tantalizing possibility of actually watching space-time emerge in real time. It's like being able to see the moment when individual water molecules suddenly start behaving collectively as a liquid, except what's emerging isn't wetness, but the very notion of spatial relationship itself. What's particularly fascinating is that these laboratory systems can be manipulated in ways that would be impossible in real space-time. Researchers can effectively reverse time in these quantum systems, watching the emergence process run backward. They can create regions where the usual rules of spatial relationship break down, where distance becomes ambiguous or undefined. These experiments suggest that space-time might be far more malleable than we typically imagine. If space and time are emergent properties of quantum systems, then they might be programmable, adjustable, even optional under the right circumstances. It's a bit like discovering that what you thought was solid bedrock is actually more like clay that can be moulded and reshaped. As we contemplate these possibilities, we find ourselves confronting questions that have puzzled philosophers for millennia, but now with the tools and insights of modern physics. If space-time is emergent, what does that mean for causality, for the relationship between cause and effect that seems so fundamental to how we understand the world? In our everyday experience, causes precede effects in time. You flip a switch, then the light turns on. You speak, then someone hears your words. But if time itself is emergent, then causality might be more fundamental than time, rather than the other way around. The universe might be organized by causal relationships that give rise to the appearance of temporal sequence, rather than temporal sequence organizing causal relationships. This reverses our usual way of thinking about reality. Instead of asking what happened when, we might need to ask what caused what, and allow the answers to define the temporal relationships. It's like the difference between reading a story chronologically versus reading it as a web of interconnected events and consequences. Some philosophers have suggested that this view of reality might actually be more compatible with our direct experience than our usual space-time thinking. When you remember something, you don't typically think of it as accessing information stored at a particular past time coordinate. You think of it as part of your ongoing story, connected to your present experience through threads of meaning and causation. Similarly, when you anticipate the future, you're not really thinking about events that exist at specific future time coordinates. You're thinking about possibilities that emerge from present conditions through causal processes. The future exists for you not as a place in time, but as a space of potential relationships and consequences. This brings us to perhaps the most profound implication of emergent spacetime theories. If space and time aren't fundamental, if they're patterns that emerge from deeper quantum processes, then what about consciousness itself? What about the experience of being you here, now? Some physicists and philosophers have begun to wonder if consciousness might be as fundamental as the quantum processes from which spacetime emerges, just as space and time might be how quantum reality experiences spatial and temporal relationships. Perhaps consciousness is how the universe experiences being itself. This isn't to say that every particle is conscious, but rather that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of reality that becomes apparent when information processing reaches sufficient complexity, just as space and time become apparent when quantum entanglement reaches sufficient complexity. Consider the possibility that you sitting here listening to these words are not separate from the cosmic processes we've been discussing. Your consciousness might be an expression of the same fundamental reality that gives rise to space-time itself. The awareness you have of existing here and now might be the universe becoming aware of itself through the particular pattern of relationships that constitutes you. This would mean that your inner experience, your thoughts and feelings and sensations aren't just private mental events happening inside your skull. They're part of the ongoing cosmic process of reality organizing and experiencing itself. Your consciousness would be as fundamental and mysterious as space and time themselves. In this view, the question isn't how consciousness arises from unconscious matter, but how the fundamental creative principle of the universe, the process that gives rise to both consciousness and space-time, expresses itself through the particular patterns we call minds and matter. Now, you might be wondering what all of this means for your daily life. After all, whether space-time is fundamental or emergent, you still need to catch the bus, pay your bills, and navigate the practical realities of existence. But understanding the possibly illusory nature of space and time might actually change how you relate to your everyday experiences in subtle but profound ways. If space and time are emergent patterns rather than fundamental containers, then the boundaries we usually draw between self and world, between past and future, between here and there, might be more fluid than we typically imagine. Your sense of being a separate individual existing at a particular location for a limited time might be more like a convenient approximation than an ultimate truth. This doesn't mean that practical distinctions don't matter. Even if the movie screen isn't ultimately real, the images projected on it can still move you to tears or laughter. Even if space-time is emergent, the patterns it creates, including the pattern you call your life, remain meaningful and significant. But it might change how you hold these patterns. Knowing that a movie is just images on a screen doesn't make the story less engaging, but it might make you less likely to get completely lost in it. Similarly, understanding the emergent nature of space-time might help you hold your life story more lightly, with less attachment to the particular coordinates of space and time that define your current situation. If your identity is more like a verb than a noun, more like a process than a thing, then the challenges and changes you face might feel less threatening to who you essentially are. You're not a fixed entity moving through space and time, but a dynamic pattern of relationships continuously recreating itself. moment by moment. As we near the end of our exploration tonight, it's worth acknowledging how much mystery remains. Even if space-time is emergent, even if we can show mathematically how it arises from quantum processes, we're still left with the profound question of why there's anything at all rather than nothing. The theories we've discussed, loop quantum gravity, holographic emergence, information theoretic approaches, they all push the mystery back one level without ultimately resolving it. If space-time emerges from quantum information, what gives rise to quantum information? If reality is fundamentally relational, what grounds the relationships? If consciousness and space-time are both emergent patterns, what is the creative principle from which they emerge? Perhaps this is as it should be. Perhaps the deepest truths about reality will always remain somewhat mysterious, not because of limitations in our scientific methods, but because mystery might be an essential feature of existence itself. The universe might be fundamentally creative, fundamentally open, fundamentally surprising in ways that no final theory could completely capture. This doesn't diminish the value of our scientific explorations. Understanding how space-time might emerge from quantum processes is a profound achievement that reshapes our understanding of reality, but it also opens up new vistas of mystery, new questions that we couldn't even have formulated before. In a sense, we're like explorers who set out to map a new continent and discovered that the continent is actually floating on an ocean we never knew existed. The mapping project continues, but the horizon has expanded beyond anything we initially imagined. And perhaps that's the most beautiful aspect of this journey. Each answer we find reveals new questions. Each solution opens up new mysteries. The universe seems designed to keep us curious, to keep us exploring, to keep us wondering about the nature of existence itself. As you settle into sleep tonight, or continue with your day, you might find yourself noticing space and time a little differently. The room around you, the moment you're in, the sense of being located somewhere, and some when all of this might feel a bit more mysterious, a bit more wonderful, a bit more like a gift than a given. And that sense of wonder, that capacity for awe in the face of mystery, might be the most fundamental thing of all. Not because it explains anything, but because it connects you to the ongoing creative process that gives rise to space-time, consciousness, and everything else we call reality. The fabric of space-time might not be real, but your amazement at this possibility certainly is. And in that amazement, in that capacity to be surprised and delighted by the mystery of existence, you're participating in the very process that creates worlds. But what if the emergence of space-time isn't just a beautiful theoretical construct? What if we're actually living inside something remarkably similar to a cosmic computation, where space and time are the user interface of a deeper, informational reality? Consider your smartphone for a moment. When you touch an icon on the screen, you're not actually touching the app itself. You're interacting with a visual representation that makes the underlying computational processes accessible to your senses. The colourful icons, the smooth animations, the sense of depth and movement, all of this is a carefully designed interface that translates binary code into something your human mind can understand and navigate. Now imagine that physical reality works in a similar way. The three dimensions of space, the forward flow of time, the solid feel of matter, all of this might be the universe's user interface, a way of making deeper quantum informational processes accessible to consciousness like yours. When you walk across a room, you might not be moving through space so much as navigating through a kind of cosmic software, with distance and duration being the way the universe represents computational relationships to minds like ours. This perspective helps us understand why space and time have the particular properties they do. Why is space three-dimensional rather than 2 or 4? Why does time flow forward rather than backward or sideways? Perhaps these features aren't arbitrary facts about reality, but design choices in the cosmic interface optimized for the kinds of conscious beings that emerge within it. Recent work in digital physics has taken this analogy quite literally. Some researchers propose that the universe might actually be a vast quantum computer, with every particle interaction being a computational operation. In this view, what we call the laws of physics are really the algorithms running on cosmic hardware, and what we experience as physical events are the outputs of these calculations. It's a breathtaking thought experiment. Imagine the universe as an incomprehensibly vast quantum computer, running a simulation so detailed and complex that it includes the emergence of conscious observers who can contemplate their own computational nature. You would be both a character in this cosmic program and a subroutine capable of becoming aware of the programming itself. But here's where the metaphor becomes beautifully paradoxical. Unlike a simulation running on a computer we built, this cosmic computation would have no external hardware. The computation would be self-grounding, self-executing, self-aware. It would be a program that writes itself while running itself, creating the very concepts of hardware and software as emergent features of its own processing. This leads us to one of the most mind-bending possibilities in all of physics: the idea of a bootstrap universe, a reality that somehow creates itself through recursive loops of causation that transcend our normal understanding of cause and effect. Think about the strange loops in your own consciousness. You are aware of being aware. You can think about your thoughts. You can observe yourself observing. This creates a kind of recursive structure where consciousness seems to fold back on itself, creating levels of self-reference that have no clear beginning or end. What if reality itself has this same bootstrap structure? What if the quantum processes that give rise to spacetime are themselves created by the spacetime they generate? It would be like a song that sings itself into existence, or a story that writes itself by telling itself. In some approaches to quantum gravity, this isn't just poetic speculation, but mathematical reality. The equations describe systems where the fundamental quantum fields are defined by the very space-time geometry they create. It's a kind of cosmic circular causality, where effect and cause become indistinguishable, where the universe pulls itself up by its own quantum bootstraps. This bootstrap structure might explain one of the deepest mysteries in physics: why the universe seems so finely tuned for the emergence of complexity and consciousness. Rather than requiring some external fine-tuner, a bootstrap universe would naturally evolve toward configurations that support its own existence and self-awareness. It's not that the universe was designed to create conscious observers, but that only universes capable of creating conscious observers can bootstrap themselves into existence. You, sitting here contemplating these ideas, might be part of this cosmic self-creation process. Your consciousness, your ability to wonder about the nature of reality, your capacity to understand and appreciate the mystery of existence, all of this might be how the universe comes to know itself, how it completes the bootstrap loop that allows it to exist. As we delve deeper into the implications of emergent space-time, we begin to see that space and time might not be uniform, neutral containers, but rather dynamic living processes more like an ecology than a stage. Think about a forest ecosystem. From a distance, it might look like a collection of separate trees standing in empty space. But look closer and you discover that the forest is actually a vast network of relationships. The trees are connected underground by fungal networks that share nutrients and information. The soil teems with microorganisms that process organic matter and support plant growth. Birds and insects create connections between distant parts of the forest through pollination and seed dispersal. What seems like empty space between the trees is actually filled with invisible relationships, chemical signals, energy flows, and information transfer. The forest isn't trees plus empty space. It's a dynamic web of relationships where every part influences every other part. Spacetime might be similar. What we think of as empty space between objects might actually be teeming with quantum relationships, entanglement networks, and information flows. The particles and fields we observe might be like the trees in the forest, the visible nodes of a deeper relational network that constitutes the true reality. This ecological view of space-time helps us understand why the universe seems so interconnected, why quantum entanglement can create instantaneous correlations across vast distances, why the behavior of particles can be influenced by measurements made light years away. It's not that information is traveling faster than light through space. It's that the space itself is a manifestation of the underlying network of relationships. In this picture, when we talk about the expansion of the universe, we're not describing the stretching of some pre-existing spatial container. We're describing the growth and evolution of the cosmic relationship network itself. New space isn't being created in some external sense, rather, new patterns of quantum relationships are emerging that we interpret as spatial expansion. This ecological perspective also suggests that space-time might have something analogous to health and disease. Just as ecosystems can be damaged by pollution or restored through careful stewardship, the fabric of space-time might be affected by the kinds of processes that occur within it. Extreme events like black hole formation or the collision of neutron stars might be like forest fires in the space-time ecosystem, destructive but also potentially regenerative. Now we come to perhaps the most profound question of all. If space-time is emergent, if consciousness is somehow fundamental, then what is the relationship between your awareness and the cosmic processes we've been exploring? Consider this moment right now as you listen to these words. You have a sense of being present, of existing here and now, of being the center of your own experience. This feeling of presence, of occupying a particular location in space and moment in time, is so immediate and obvious that we rarely question it. But what if this sense of presence is actually your direct experience of participating in the emergence of space-time itself? When you pay attention to your breath, you're not just observing air moving in and out of your lungs. You're participating in a process that connects you to the entire atmospheric system of the planet, which connects to the solar radiation that drives weather patterns, which connects to the nuclear fusion processes in the sun, which connect to the fundamental forces and fields that structure the cosmos. Your breath is a thread in the cosmic web, and when you become aware of breathing, you're becoming aware of your participation in the larger patterns that constitute reality. Similarly, when you become aware of existing here and now, you might be experiencing your role as a node in the network of relationships that gives rise to space-time itself. This suggests that meditation and contemplative practices might be more than just techniques for relaxation or self-improvement. They might be ways of directly experiencing the fundamental nature of reality. When you sit quietly, and observe the contents of your consciousness, you're not just watching mental events, you're participating in the same kind of observational process that collapses quantum superpositions and crystallizes reality out of possibility. The ancient contemplatives who spoke of experiencing unity with the cosmos, of transcending the boundaries of space and time, of realizing their true nature as pure awareness, might have been describing genuine insights into the nature of emergent spacetime. They might have discovered through direct experience what physicists are now discovering through mathematical analysis, that the boundaries between self and cosmos, between mind and matter, between observer and observed, are not fundamental features of reality, but emergent patterns that can be seen through with sufficient clarity. But this raises a fascinating paradox. If space-time is emergent from quantum processes, and if consciousness plays a role in the emergence of space-time through observation and measurement, then what was the universe like before conscious observers evolved to observe it? This is more than just a philosophical puzzle, it's a genuine challenge to our understanding of cosmic evolution. According to our current theories, the universe began with the Big Bang about 13.0 billion years ago. For most of this time, there were no conscious observers, no beings capable of making measurements or collapsing quantum superpositions. Yet we assume that space and time existed throughout this period, that galaxies formed and stars ignited and planets coalesced in a well-defined space-time framework. But if space-time emerges from quantum processes that require observation to become definite, then what was happening during the billions of years before observers appeared? Was the universe in some kind of suspended quantum superposition, waiting for consciousness to emerge and retroactively define its history? Some physicists have proposed that the universe might have a kind of self-observing property, that quantum systems can effectively observe themselves through their interactions with each other, creating the appearance of definite space-time, even in the absence of conscious observers. In this view, every particle interaction is a kind of mini-measurement that contributes to the ongoing crystallization of reality. Others have suggested that consciousness might be more fundamental and widespread than we typically assume, that even simple quantum systems might have rudimentary forms of awareness that participate in the measurement process. This would mean that the universe has always been conscious in some sense, just not in the complex reflective way that characterizes human awareness. There's also the intriguing possibility that the emergence of conscious observers somehow reaches backward in time, retroactively defining the history of the universe that led to their own existence. This would be the ultimate bootstrap paradox. Consciousness creates the space-time history that led to its own emergence. As we contemplate these profound mysteries, it's worth remembering that we're not the first humans to wonder about the fundamental nature of space and time. For thousands of years, philosophers, mystics, and early scientists have intuited that reality might be far stranger and more unified than our everyday experience suggests. The ancient Pythagoreans spoke of the music of the spheres, the idea that the cosmos is fundamentally mathematical and harmonic, that the movements of celestial bodies create a kind of cosmic symphony that we can't hear with our physical ears, but might apprehend through mathematical insight or mystical contemplation. In a remarkable way, modern physics is returning to this ancient vision. The equations of quantum field theory and general relativity can be seen as describing the mathematical harmonies underlying physical reality. The quantum fields that give rise to particles and forces oscillate with specific frequencies, creating resonance patterns that might literally be the music of creation. If space-time is emergent from quantum processes, then perhaps we really are living within a cosmic symphony, where space and time are the rhythms and melodies that emerge from the deeper mathematical harmonies of quantum reality. Your own existence, your thoughts and experiences, and the story of your life would be part of this grand composition, a unique theme in the infinite symphony of being. This musical metaphor helps us understand why mathematics is so unreasonably effective at describing physical reality. Mathematics isn't just a human invention that happens to match the structure of the universe. It might be the fundamental language in which the universe composes itself. When we discover mathematical relationships in physics, we're not imposing abstract concepts on reality. We're discovering the actual harmonies from which reality is woven. Looking toward the future, the implications of emergent space-time theories extend far beyond abstract physics and philosophy. If we can understand how space-time emerges from quantum processes, we might eventually learn how to manipulate those processes, potentially gaining some measure of control over the fabric of reality itself. Imagine technologies that could locally modify the emergence of space-time, creating regions where the usual rules of distance and duration don't apply. We might develop forms of transportation that work by altering the quantum relationships that give rise to spatial separation, effectively bringing distant locations into closer informational contact. Or consider the possibilities for information processing. If consciousness and computation are fundamentally related to the processes that create space-time, then advances in our understanding might lead to new forms of computing that work by manipulating the quantum substrate of reality itself. We might develop artificial intelligences that think not just with silicon circuits, but with the fundamental informational processes that give rise to space and time. There's also the intriguing possibility that understanding emergent space-time might help us understand aging and mortality in new ways. If time is emergent from quantum processes, and if consciousness participates in those processes, then perhaps the forward flow of biological time isn't as inevitable as we assume. We might discover that death is not the cessation of existence, but a transition to different patterns of relationship in the quantum network that underlies reality. But perhaps most importantly, understanding the emergent nature of space-time might help us develop a deeper sense of our place in the cosmos. Instead of seeing ourselves as temporary arrangements of matter existing briefly in an indifferent universe, we might come to understand ourselves as expressions of the same creative principle that gives rise to space, time, and everything else we call reality. As our journey through the mysteries of emergent space-time draws toward a close, let's return to the most immediate and intimate aspect of this exploration: your own experience of existing here and now. Right now, as you hear these words, you have a direct, undeniable experience of presence. You know that you exist, that you're aware, that you're having experiences. This knowledge doesn't come from reasoning or measurement. It's immediate and self-evident. You don't need to prove to yourself that you're conscious, you simply are. But where exactly is this now that you're experiencing? If you try to pin down the present moment, it becomes strangely elusive. By the time you've identified now, that moment has already passed into memory. The present seems to be a moving boundary between past and future, but the boundary itself has no duration, no extension in time. Physicists have wrestled with this mystery for decades. In Einstein's relativity, simultaneity is relative. There's no universal now that extends across all of space. Different observers will disagree about which events are happening now and all of their perspectives are equally valid. The present moment seems to be not a feature of the universe itself, but something that emerges from the relationship between consciousness and the flow of events. If space-time is emergent, this makes perfect sense. The now that you experience might not be a location in time, but your participation in the ongoing process of reality creating itself. When you experience the present moment, you're not occupying a position on some cosmic timeline. You're participating in the eternal process of becoming that gives rise to the illusion of time itself. This perspective transforms our understanding of mortality and meaning. Instead of being temporary beings who exist for a brief moment in cosmic history, we might be eternal aspects of the creative process that gives rise to history itself. Your death wouldn't be the end of your existence, but a transformation in the pattern of relationships that constitutes your participation in the ongoing creation of reality. The fear of death often comes from imagining ourselves as separate entities who will someday cease to exist. But if the boundaries between self and cosmos are emergent rather than fundamental, then what we really are, our deepest nature, might be as eternal and indestructible as the quantum processes from which space-time itself emerges. So what does all of this mean for how you live your daily life? How do you integrate the possibility that space-time isn't real into your practical experience of navigating the world? Perhaps the most important insight is that wonder itself might be a form of participation in the cosmic creative process. When you look at the night sky and feel amazed by the vastness of space, when you contemplate the mystery of consciousness, when you're struck by the beauty of a sunset or the complexity of a flower, you're not just having pleasant emotional experiences, you're participating in the universe's ongoing discovery of itself. Your capacity for wonder, for awe, for curiosity about the nature of existence might be one of the ways the cosmos becomes conscious of its own mystery. Through your questions and contemplations, through your sense of beauty and meaning, the universe experiences what it's like to be puzzled and amazed by its own existence. This suggests that cultivating wonder isn't just personally enriching, it's cosmically significant. When you take time to really look at the world around you, to notice the play of light and shadow, the intricate patterns in clouds, the way emotions arise and pass away in your mind, you're participating in the ongoing emergence of reality itself. Meditation practices take on new meaning in this context. When you sit quietly and observe the contents of your consciousness, you're not just calming your mind or reducing stress. You're exploring the same observational process that might be fundamental to the emergence of space-time itself. You're investigating consciousness from the inside, gaining direct experience of the awareness that might be as fundamental as quantum fields or mathematical relationships. Even ordinary activities become profound when understood in this light. Walking becomes a meditation on the emergence of spatial relationships. Breathing becomes an exploration of your connection to the larger patterns that constitute the cosmos. Thinking becomes participation in the universe's ongoing contemplation of its own nature. If consciousness and space-time emerge from the same fundamental processes, then perhaps compassion isn't just a human emotion, but a reflection of something basic about the structure of reality itself. Think about what compassion really means. It's the ability to recognize yourself in others, to feel their suffering as your own, to respond to their needs as if they were your needs. Compassion emerges from the recognition that the boundaries between self and other are not as solid as they appear, that we're all part of something larger and more interconnected than our separate identities suggest. If the boundaries between self and world are emergent patterns rather than fundamental facts, then compassion might be a more accurate perception of reality than the sense of separation that often dominates our experience. When you feel moved by someone else's pain or joy, you might be experiencing directly the underlying unity from which the appearance of separateness emerges. This doesn't mean that individual differences don't matter or that personal boundaries aren't important. Just as the emergent nature of space-time doesn't make distance and duration meaningless, the emergent nature of personal identity doesn't make individual needs and perspectives irrelevant. But it does suggest that taking care of others might be, in the deepest sense, taking care of yourself. Not because of some abstract moral principle, but because the yourself and the others are patterns in the same underlying reality. The welfare of the whole and the welfare of the parts are not separate concerns, but different aspects of the same fundamental care that reality has for its own well-being. This perspective might help explain why acts of genuine compassion feel so naturally fulfilling, why helping others often feels like coming home to yourself. You're not sacrificing your interests for someone else's. You're recognizing and acting from the deeper level where your interests and theirs emerge from the same source. As we prepare to complete our exploration of emergent space-time, it's worth reflecting on the journey we've taken together. We began with the simple observation that space and time might not be fundamental features of reality, and we've travelled through quantum loops and holographic principles, through bootstrap universes and cosmic computation, through the relationship between consciousness and the fabric of existence itself. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery is that this journey, which seemed to take us far from our ordinary experience into the realm of abstract physics and philosophy, has actually brought us home to a deeper understanding of what it means to be here, now, aware and alive. The space-time that seemed so solid and objective at the beginning of our exploration has revealed itself to be more like a dream or a story, a meaningful pattern that emerges from something deeper and more mysterious. But this doesn't make your experience less real or less significant. Instead, it reveals that you are participating in something far more creative and magical than you might have imagined. Your life, with all its joys and sorrows, its challenges and achievements, its moments of clarity and confusion, is part of the ongoing process by which the universe comes to know itself. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every choice you make is a thread in the vast tapestry of relationships from which reality itself is woven. This understanding might not change the practical details of your daily life. You'll still need to navigate the apparent realities of space and time, still need to catch buses and pay bills and relate to other people, but it might change how you hold these experiences, how you understand their ultimate meaning and significance. Instead of feeling like a temporary visitor in an alien universe, you might begin to feel at home in a cosmos that is, in some profound sense, made of the same stuff as your consciousness. Instead of feeling isolated and separate, you might begin to sense your deep connection to everything else that exists. Instead of feeling that your life is a brief interruption in an eternal void, you might begin to understand yourself as an eternal expression of the creative principle that gives rise to space, time, and everything else we call real. And so we come to what feels like an ending, but might actually be a beginning. The exploration of emergent space-time doesn't resolve the mystery of existence, it deepens it. Every answer we've discovered has opened up new questions. Every insight has revealed new depths of wonder. This is exactly as it should be. Mystery isn't a problem to be solved, but a gift to be received. An invitation to keep exploring, to keep questioning, to keep marveling at the extraordinary facts that anything exists at all, let alone something as beautiful and complex as a universe that can contemplate its own nature. The theories we've explored tonight, loop quantum gravity, holographic emergence, digital physics, they're all works in progress, attempts to understand something that might ultimately be beyond complete understanding. But that's not a failure of science, it's a recognition that reality is more creative, more surprising, more generous with mystery than any theory could fully capture. Your own consciousness, your ability to wonder about these questions, your capacity to be moved by the beauty and strangeness of existence might be more fundamental than any scientific theory. You're not just studying the universe, you're participating in its ongoing self-discovery. As you drift towards sleep tonight, or continue with your day wherever you are in the world, you might find yourself noticing the mystery of existence in new ways. The simple fact that you're aware, that you exist, that you can contemplate the nature of space and time, might strike you as more miraculous than any scientific discovery. And in that sense of wonder, in that openness to mystery, you're participating in the same creative process that gives rise to space-time, consciousness, and everything else we call reality. You're not separate from the cosmic dance, you are the cosmic dance, expressing itself through the particular pattern of relationships and experiences that you call your life. The fabric of space-time might not be real in the way we typically imagine, but your amazement at this possibility is absolutely real. And in that amazement, in that capacity to be surprised and delighted by the mystery of existence, something eternal and indestructible expresses itself through the temporary pattern you call yourself. Whether space-time is fundamental or emergent, whether consciousness creates reality or reality creates consciousness, whether the universe is a cosmic computer or a bootstrap paradox or something else entirely, one thing remains constant. The mystery continues, the wonder deepens, and the exploration never ends. Sweet dreams, fellow explorers. The universe is far stranger and more beautiful than we ever imagined, and we've barely begun to discover what it means to exist within its endless creativity. And speaking of the mysteries of consciousness, if you found tonight's exploration of emergent space-time thought-provoking, you might be curious about another profound puzzle that touches your life every single night. While we've been contemplating whether space and time are real, your brain has been preparing for its own nightly journey into a realm where the usual rules of reality don't apply at all. Next time, we'll explore the disturbing reason. Your brain creates crazy dreams. Every night, where we'll discover why consciousness conjures up bizarre alternate realities during sleep, and what these strange nocturnal adventures might reveal about the fundamental nature of mind and reality itself. Until then, rest well in the mystery of existence. But there's something we haven't yet explored about emergent space-time that might be the most personally relevant of all. If space and time aren't fundamental, if they're patterns that emerge from deeper processes, then what happens to our most cherished stories about causation, free will, and the possibility of changing our future? Think about this moment right now. You're listening to these words, perhaps planning what you'll do next, maybe reflecting on decisions you made earlier today. All of this assumes a particular relationship between past, present, and future, a relationship where your choices matter, where the future is genuinely open, where you have real agency in shaping what comes next. But if time is emergent, if it's not a fundamental flow from past to future, but a way that consciousness organizes quantum relationships, then the entire framework of choice and consequence might need to be reconsidered. This isn't just an abstract philosophical puzzle, it touches the very heart of what it means to be human. Consider the paradox of memory and anticipation. When you remember something from your past, you're not accessing information stored at a previous time coordinate. Your memory exists now, in this present moment, as patterns of neural activity in your brain. Similarly, when you imagine future possibilities, those imaginings exist now as present mental activity. If space-time is emergent, then perhaps what we call the past and future are really different ways that consciousness organizes information in the eternal now. Your memories might not be records of events that happened in a previous time, but present patterns that participate in creating the illusion of temporal sequence. This leads to a fascinating possibility. What if your ability to remember the past and envision the future is actually part of the process by which space-time emerges? What if consciousness doesn't just observe the flow of time, but participates in creating it through the very act of organizing experience into temporal narratives? In this view, when you make a decision about the future, you're not just predicting what will happen in some pre-existing temporal framework. You're participating in the creation of the temporal framework itself. Your choices don't just influence the future, they help determine what counts as future in the first place. This brings us to one of the most profound implications of emergent space-time theories. The possibility that reality is not a dictatorship ruled by fixed laws, but a kind of democracy where consciousness participates in determining what becomes real. In our usual way of thinking, the laws of physics are like constitutional principles that govern the universe, whether we like it or not. Gravity pulls objects together, energy is conserved, nothing travels faster than light. These seem like objective facts about reality that exist independently of what any conscious being thinks or feels about them. But if space-time emerges from quantum processes, and if consciousness plays a role in those processes through observation and measurement, then perhaps the laws of physics are more like democratic decisions, patterns that emerge from the collective behavior of all the conscious observers in the universe. This doesn't mean that you can personally change the speed of light just by thinking about it. In a democracy, individual votes matter, but they're part of a larger collective decision-making process. Similarly, your consciousness might participate in determining the structure of physical reality, but as part of a vast cosmic democracy that includes every conscious being that has ever existed or ever will exist. Think about how this might work. Every time you observe something, every time you make a measurement, or simply pay attention to your experience, you're casting a kind of vote in this cosmic democracy. You're contributing to the collective process by which reality crystallizes out of quantum possibility into definite, observable form. Your choices about what to pay attention to, how to interpret your experiences, what to believe about the nature of reality, these might not just be personal preferences, but actual contributions to the ongoing creation of the universe. The cosmos might be constantly holding a kind of election about what should exist, and consciousness might be the franchise, the right to vote in this cosmic democracy. This perspective transforms our understanding of responsibility and agency. You're not just responsible for your own actions and their consequences, you're a co-creator of the very framework within which actions and consequences make sense. Every moment of awareness, every act of observation, Every choice about how to interpret reality is a small but significant contribution to the ongoing collective creation of the universe. If consciousness participates in the emergence of space-time, then perhaps our thoughts, emotions, and intentions have a more direct impact on physical reality than we typically imagine. This opens up fascinating possibilities for understanding how mind and body interact, how healing works, and why consciousness seems to have such a profound effect on health and well-being. Consider the placebo effect, one of the most mysterious phenomena in medicine. When people believe they're receiving effective treatment, they often experience real improvements in their health, even when the treatment is completely inert. From a conventional perspective, this is puzzling. How can a belief change physical reality? But if space-time is emergent from quantum processes that involve consciousness, then the placebo effect makes perfect sense. Belief isn't just a mental state, it's a way of organizing consciousness that participates in determining what becomes physically real. When you believe in healing, you're not just having pleasant thoughts, you're contributing to the quantum processes that give rise to the physical conditions in your body. This doesn't mean that all illness is just in your head, or that positive thinking can cure everything. The cosmic democracy of reality includes many voters, and your individual consciousness is just one voice in a vast chorus. But it does suggest that consciousness has a more active role in shaping physical reality than our usual materialistic worldview acknowledges. Think about the profound implications this might have for medicine and healing. Instead of treating the body as a machine that occasionally breaks down and needs repair, we might develop approaches to health that recognize the body as an emergent pattern arising from the same quantum processes that give rise to consciousness and space-time. Healing might involve learning to align your consciousness more harmoniously with the deeper patterns that create physical reality. Meditation, prayer, visualization, and other consciousness-based practices might work not just by reducing stress or promoting relaxation, but by directly participating in the quantum processes that give rise to bodily health. This perspective also suggests new ways of understanding chronic illness, aging, and mortality. If the body is an emergent pattern, rather than a fixed biological machine, then these conditions might be more malleable than we typically assume. Not through wishful thinking or denial of physical reality, but through deeper understanding of how consciousness and matter co-emerge from the same quantum foundation. This leads us to consider something that touches every moment of your daily life: attention itself. If consciousness participates in the emergence of space-time, then what you pay attention to might literally help determine what aspects of reality become manifest. Right now, as you listen to these words, you're choosing to focus your attention on ideas about the nature of space and time. But you could just as easily be paying attention to the sounds around you, the sensations in your body, the thoughts and emotions arising in your mind. Each choice of attention is a choice about what aspects of the infinite quantum possibility space become actualized in your experience. This transforms our understanding of what it means to live consciously. Instead of consciousness being something that passively observes an already existing world, consciousness becomes an active participant in the ongoing creation of the world. Where you direct your attention, what you choose to notice, how you interpret your experiences, these aren't just personal preferences, but acts of cosmic creativity. Consider the implications for education, art, and culture. If attention participates in creating reality, then the stories we tell, the images we create, the ideas we share, these aren't just entertainment or information exchange, but participation in the collective dreaming of reality. Artists, writers, teachers, and storytellers become co-creators of the cosmic democracy, helping to shape what possibilities get voted into existence. This might explain why certain ideas and stories seem to have such power to change the world. It's not just that they influence how people think and behave, though they certainly do that. It might be that compelling narratives actually participate in reshaping the quantum substrate from which reality emerges. When millions of people share similar beliefs, when cultures develop collective ways of understanding and interpreting experience, this might create something like a consensus reality that has genuine physical effects. The shared attention and intention of conscious beings might literally vote certain possibilities into existence while making others less likely to manifest. Now let's explore what all of this means for your understanding of personal identity. If space-time is emergent, and if consciousness participates in its emergence, then what exactly are you? In the conventional view, you're a biological organism, a complex arrangement of atoms and molecules that temporarily maintains its organization through metabolic processes. You exist for a limited time in a small region of space, and when your biological processes cease, you cease to exist. But if space-time itself is emergent from quantum processes, then this entire framework needs to be reconsidered. The atoms and molecules that make up your body are themselves patterns in quantum fields. The biological processes that sustain your life are emergent properties of these quantum patterns. Even the space in which your body exists and the time through which your life unfolds are emergent rather than fundamental. So what are you really? Perhaps you're better understood as a pattern of relationships, a unique way that the universe organizes itself temporarily to create the experience of being someone. Your identity isn't located in your body or your brain, but in the dynamic pattern of quantum relationships that gives rise to your particular form of consciousness. This pattern includes not just your internal mental states, but your relationships with other people, with the environment, with the larger cosmos. You exist in relationship, and the relationships themselves are part of what constitutes your identity. When you interact with others, when you respond to beauty in nature, when you contemplate the mysteries of existence, you're not just having experiences, you're continuously recreating the pattern of relationships that you are. From this perspective, death isn't the cessation of existence, but a transformation in the pattern. The quantum relationships that constitute your deepest identity don't disappear when your biological processes cease. They reorganize into new patterns. What you essentially are, your participation in the cosmic democracy of consciousness, continues in new forms. This doesn't necessarily mean personal survival after death in the way that's traditionally conceived. The pattern that emerges after the dissolution of your biological body might be so different from your current form of consciousness that it wouldn't feel like the same person. But it does suggest that nothing of ultimate value is ever lost, that your unique contribution to the cosmic democracy becomes part of the eternal conversation by which reality creates itself. So how do you live with these insights? How do you integrate the possibility that you're a pattern of quantum relationships participating in the emergence of space-time itself? Perhaps the most practical approach is the cultivation of presence, the practice of becoming more aware of your direct experience in each moment. When you pay close attention to what's actually happening right now, you're participating more consciously in the process by which reality emerges from possibility. This doesn't require any special beliefs or techniques, though meditation and contemplative practices can certainly be helpful. It's more about bringing a quality of openness and curiosity to whatever you're experiencing. When you eat, really taste your food. When you walk, feel your feet touching the ground. When you listen to music, let yourself be fully absorbed in the sounds and rhythms. This kind of presence might be more than just a pleasant way to experience life. If consciousness participates in the emergence of space-time, then presence might be a way of participating more fully in the cosmic creative process. When you're truly present, you're not just observing reality, you're helping to create it through the quality of your attention and awareness. Presence also naturally leads to what we might call quantum ethics. If you're participating in the creation of reality through your consciousness, then you bear some responsibility for what gets created. This doesn't mean you should be anxious about every thought or emotion. Remember, you're just one vote in the cosmic democracy. But it does suggest that cultivating positive, loving, creative states of consciousness isn't just personally beneficial, it's a contribution to the collective well-being of the cosmos. When you practice kindness, when you appreciate beauty, when you respond to others with compassion, you're not just being a good person, you're casting votes in favor of a reality where kindness, beauty, and compassion have more power to manifest. You're participating in the creation of a cosmos that reflects the highest possibilities of consciousness. There's something particularly poignant about these ideas when we consider the younger generation, the children who are growing up in a world where the fundamental nature of reality is being questioned and reimagined by science itself. These children are digital natives, comfortable with virtual realities, augmented experiences, and the idea that information can create entire worlds. They're growing up with quantum computers and artificial intelligence, with the understanding that reality might be far stranger and more malleable than previous generations imagined. Perhaps they're naturally more prepared to understand that space-time might be emergent, that consciousness might be fundamental, that reality might be more like a collaborative dream than a fixed stage. They're already living in a world where the boundaries between physical and digital, real and virtual, individual and collective are becoming increasingly fluid. If the theories we've been exploring are correct, then these children might be the first generation to grow up with a truly post-space-time understanding of reality. They might develop forms of consciousness that are more naturally aligned with the quantum processes from which space-time emerges. They might learn to navigate reality in ways that seem impossible to those of us who grew up thinking of space and time as fundamental. This doesn't mean they'll develop supernatural powers or transcend the need for physical bodies, but they might have a more fluid, creative relationship with the apparent boundaries of space and time. They might be more comfortable with uncertainty, more skilled at holding multiple perspectives simultaneously, more capable of participating consciously in the collective dreaming of reality. Watching children play, you can already see hints of this. They move effortlessly between imaginary worlds and practical concerns. They treat virtual experiences as genuinely meaningful. They're comfortable with the idea that stories and games can create real experiences and real relationships. Perhaps they're showing us what it looks like to live in a reality where the boundaries between mind and matter, between individual and cosmos, are understood to be emergent rather than fundamental. If reality is more like a verb than a noun, more like a process than a thing, then perhaps we need to develop new forms of art and expression that capture this dynamic, emergent quality of existence, Traditional art often tries to capture or represent something, to freeze a moment in time or depict an object in space. But if space-time itself is emergent, if reality is constantly becoming rather than simply being, then perhaps we need art forms that participate in this becoming rather than just representing it. Think about music, which already exists in time rather than space. When you listen to a symphony, you're not observing something static. You're participating in an unfolding process. The beauty of music emerges from relationships between sounds as they evolve through time. Perhaps music is already a glimpse of what art looks like in a post-space-time reality. But we might imagine even more radical forms of expression. Art that changes based on who's observing it, that emerges from the interaction between consciousness and quantum possibility. Collaborative creativity that involves not just human consciousness, but the deeper creative processes from which space-time itself emerges. Interactive media, virtual and augmented reality experiences, consciousness-responsive environments, these might be early experiments in post-space-time art. They're already blurring the boundaries between observer and observed, between the artwork and the experience of the artwork, between individual and collective creativity. Perhaps in the future, artistic expression will be recognized as a form of participation in the fundamental creative process of the cosmos. Artists won't just make things, they'll participate in the ongoing creation of reality itself. And perhaps we'll all be recognized as artists in this deeper sense, co-creators of the cosmic masterpiece that is existence itself. Dante ended his Divine Comedy with a reference to the love that moves the sun and other stars, suggesting that the fundamental force behind cosmic movement is not mechanical, but something more akin to love or desire. In light of our exploration of emergent space-time, this ancient poetic insight might be surprisingly accurate. If consciousness participates in the emergence of space-time, and if consciousness naturally tends toward connection, relationship, and creative expression, then perhaps love really is the fundamental force that shapes reality. Not love as mere emotion, but love as the basic tendency of consciousness to reach beyond itself, to create relationship, to generate beauty and meaning and connection. Think about your own experience of love, whether romantic love, parental love, friendship, or the love of beauty, truth, or justice. Love naturally transcends boundaries. It creates connection across apparent separation. It generates care for the well-being of what is loved. It motivates creativity and sacrifice and the expansion of identity beyond narrow self-interest. If consciousness is fundamental to the emergence of space-time, then these loving tendencies of consciousness might be fundamental to the structure of reality itself. The quantum entanglement that seems to connect particles across vast distances might be a manifestation of the same connective principle that you experience as love. The creative processes that give rise to space, time, and complexity might be expressions of the same generative force that you feel when you're moved to create something beautiful or meaningful. This doesn't mean the universe is sentimental or that physics should be replaced by poetry, but it might mean that the cold mechanical universe of classical physics was never the whole story. Reality might be more like a vast love song, an expression of the fundamental creativity and connectivity that characterizes consciousness itself. When you love someone or something, you're not just having a personal experience, you're participating in the same connective force that weaves the quantum relationships from which space-time emerges. Your capacity to care, to create, to reach beyond yourself in service of something larger. These aren't just nice human qualities, they're expressions of the deepest principles that govern the cosmos. Jorge Luis Borges once imagined a library containing every possible book, an infinite collection of texts that included not only every story that has ever been written, but every story that could ever be written. Most of these books would be meaningless combinations of letters, but somewhere in the infinite collection would be the perfect description of your life. The answer to every question you've ever asked. The solution to every problem humanity has ever faced. If space-time emerges from quantum processes, and if consciousness participates in selecting which possibilities become actualized, then perhaps we're living in something like Borges' infinite library. The quantum realm might contain every possible configuration of space, time, matter, and consciousness. Most of these possibilities remain merely potential, but through the collective choices and observations of conscious beings, certain possibilities get selected and actualized into what we experience as physical reality. Your life might be one story being read from this infinite quantum library, selected through the complex interaction of your consciousness with the deeper creative processes of the cosmos. The choices you make, the attention you pay, the beliefs you hold. These might all be ways of navigating through the infinite possibilities and selecting which aspects of the library become manifest in your experience. This perspective offers a new way of understanding both fate and freedom. Your life story exists as a possibility in the quantum library, but which version gets actualized depends partly on your own conscious participation in the selection process. You're not the author of all the possibilities, but you are a co-editor, helping to choose which possibilities become real through the quality of your attention and the nature of your responses to what emerges. The stories of everyone who has ever lived or ever will live might exist simultaneously in this quantum library, interconnected in ways that transcend our usual understanding of space and time. When you feel a deep connection with someone, when you encounter a story or idea that seems to speak directly to your soul, you might be recognizing resonances between different parts of the infinite library, connections that exist at the level of pure possibility before they manifest in space-time. All of these ideas might seem abstract and far removed from the practical concerns of daily life. You still need to work, pay bills, maintain relationships, navigate the challenges and opportunities that arise in your particular circumstances. The emergence of space-time from quantum processes doesn't change the immediate realities of human existence, but these insights might change how you hold these realities, how you understand their ultimate meaning and significance. Instead of feeling like you're struggling alone in an indifferent universe, you might begin to sense that you're participating in a cosmic creative project of unimaginable beauty and complexity. The work you do, the relationships you maintain, the problems you solve, the beauty you create and appreciate, all of this becomes part of your contribution to the ongoing evolution of consciousness and the continuing emergence of space-time itself. Your life isn't just a personal story, it's a chapter in the cosmic story, a unique perspective that adds something irreplaceable to the universal narrative. This understanding might naturally lead to what we could call a gentle revolution in how you live, not a dramatic overthrow of your current life, but a subtle shift in perspective that gradually transforms everything. You might find yourself more patient with difficulties, more appreciative of simple pleasures, more curious about the mysterious nature of ordinary experiences. You might develop a deeper sense of connection with other people, recognizing them as fellow participants in the cosmic democracy rather than competitors for scarce resources. You might feel more at home in the natural world, sensing your kinship with all the patterns and processes that emerge from the same quantum foundation that gives rise to your own consciousness. Most importantly, you might discover a profound sense of meaning that doesn't depend on external achievements or recognition. Simply by being conscious, by paying attention, by responding with love and creativity to whatever arises, you're fulfilling your cosmic purpose. You're participating in the universe's ongoing project of knowing and creating itself. As our exploration draws toward its conclusion, we find ourselves in a curious position. We began by questioning the reality of space and time, and we've journeyed through quantum loops and holographic principles, through bootstrap universes and consciousness participatory cosmologies. Yet here we are, still apparently existing in space and time, still navigating the familiar rhythms of daily life. This isn't a contradiction, it's a deepening. Understanding that space-time might be emergent doesn't make it less real. It makes it more mysterious and more precious. Recognizing that you participate in creating reality doesn't diminish the reality of your experience. It reveals the profound creativity inherent in simply being aware. The space around you right now, the time through which you're moving, the sense of being located somewhere and somewhen, all of this remains as immediate and undeniable as ever. But now you might hold it more lightly, with more wonder, with recognition that this ordinary miracle of existence is far more extraordinary than we typically appreciate. Perhaps this is the deepest gift of contemplating emergent space-time. Not a new theory to believe in, but a renewed sense of amazement at the simple fact that anything exists at all. Every moment of awareness, every breath, every heartbeat, every thought and sensation and emotion becomes a participation in the cosmic creative process that gives rise to space, time, and everything else we call reality. You don't need to understand all the technical details of quantum gravity or holographic emergence to participate in this process. You're already participating simply by being conscious, simply by existing with awareness in this moment. The theories we've explored are attempts to understand something that you're already doing, something you've been doing all your life, without needing to think about it. This is both humbling and empowering. Humbling because it reveals that consciousness and existence are far more mysterious than our everyday assumptions suggest. Empowering because it suggests that you're not a passive observer of reality, but an active participant in its ongoing creation. In the end, perhaps the most important insight from our journey into emergent space-time isn't any particular theory or concept, but the recognition that reality is far more open, far more creative, far more alive than our conventional worldview suggests. The universe isn't a giant machine grinding out predetermined outcomes according to fixed laws. It's more like a vast improvisation, a cosmic jazz session where consciousness and quantum possibility dance together to create ever new forms of beauty and complexity. You're not just listening to this cosmic music. You're one of the musicians, contributing your unique voice to the eternal composition. This perspective doesn't answer all questions. It deepens the mystery. But perhaps that's exactly what we need. Not more certainty about the nature of reality, but more comfort with uncertainty, more appreciation for mystery, more willingness to participate in the ongoing creative adventure of existence without needing to know exactly where it's leading. The whisper of infinity that you can sense at the edge of consciousness, that feeling that there's always more to discover, more to experience, more to become, This might be your direct contact with the creative source from which space-time itself emerges. You don't need special techniques or training to access this. You just need to listen quietly to the silence between your thoughts, to notice the awareness that notices everything else. In that awareness, in that fundamental capacity to know and be and create, you touch something that exists before space and time, something from which space and time emerge moment by moment. And in touching that source, you realize that you're not separate from it. You're one of the ways it knows and expresses itself. The fabric of space-time might not be real in the way we typically imagine, but the consciousness that contemplates this possibility is undeniably real. And in that consciousness, in that capacity for wonder and questioning and creative response, the universe discovers what it's like to exist, to be amazed by its own existence, to participate in the eternal mystery of being. Rest well tonight, knowing that your dreams, like the cosmos itself, emerge from depths beyond space and time, and that in your dreaming and your waking alike, you're participating in the most profound creative project imaginable, the ongoing birth of reality itself. Sweet dreams, fellow co-creators of existence. And if you found tonight's exploration of emergent space-time as fascinating as I have, you might be curious about another mystery that challenges our understanding of consciousness and reality. While we've been contemplating whether space and time are fundamental, there's another phenomenon that occurs in your life every single night that reveals just how strange and malleable our experience of reality truly is. Next time, we'll delve into the disturbing reason. Your brain creates crazy dreams every night, where we'll discover why consciousness constructs bizarre alternate realities during sleep, and what these nightly journeys into impossibility might reveal about the true nature of mind, memory, and the very fabric of experience itself. Until then, sleep peacefully in the mystery of being. But there's something deeply unsettling we need to address about all of this. Something that might keep you awake tonight, pondering the very nature of your existence. If space-time truly emerges from quantum processes, and if consciousness plays a fundamental role in this emergence, then we're faced with what philosophers call the observer's paradox in its most profound form. Here's the puzzle. If your consciousness helps create the space-time framework in which you exist, then what existed before consciousness emerged in the universe? We've touched on this briefly, but let's dive deeper into this rabbit hole, because the implications are both beautiful and deeply strange. Consider your own birth. According to conventional physics, you came into existence at a particular time and place within a pre-existing space-time framework. Your parents existed before you, the Earth existed before them, the solar system existed before that, stretching back through billions of years of cosmic history to the Big Bang itself. It's a linear story of cause and effect unfolding within the stable container of space and time. But if space-time emerges from consciousness involving quantum processes, then this entire narrative becomes circular in the most mysterious way. Your consciousness, which emerged from billions of years of cosmic evolution, might actually be participating in the creation of the very space-time framework that allowed that evolution to occur. It's like discovering that the foundation of your house is somehow being built by the house itself. Some physicists have proposed that this paradox resolves through what they call retrocausal quantum mechanics, the idea that quantum effects can reach backward in time to influence their own preconditions. Your consciousness, having emerged in the present, might reach back through quantum channels to participate in creating the past that led to its own emergence. Its consciousness as its own grandfather, in a sense, participating in the cosmic bootstrap that brings itself into existence. This leads us to imagine consciousness archaeologists of the future, beings who study the deep past not through fossils and artifacts, but through the quantum traces that conscious observers leave in the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Picture this: every time you observe something, every moment of awareness, every conscious choice about where to direct your attention, you might be leaving subtle imprints in the quantum substrate of reality. These imprints wouldn't be like physical traces that degrade over time, but informational patterns woven into the very emergence of space-time itself. Future consciousness archaeologists might be able to read these quantum traces, discovering not just what happened in the past, but how the quality of consciousness in each era contributed to the ongoing creation of reality. They might find that periods of great creativity, love, and awareness left the space-time fabric more flexible and beautiful, while periods of fear, hatred, and unconsciousness created regions where space and time became more rigid and constrained. Your life, the quality of your consciousness, the depth of your presence and awareness, might literally be leaving a signature in the fundamental structure of reality that could be read by sufficiently advanced beings millions of years in the future. Every moment of genuine presence, every act of love, every flash of insight or creativity might be contributing to the cosmic archive of consciousness embedded in space-time itself. This isn't science fiction speculation. It emerges naturally from the theories we've been exploring. If consciousness participates in creating space-time, then different qualities of consciousness should create different qualities of space-time. The universe might quite literally remember every moment of awareness, every choice between love and fear, every instance of beauty recognized and appreciated. And so we arrive at perhaps the most profound realization of all. In questioning whether space-time is real, we haven't diminished the mystery of existence, we've deepened it beyond measure. We've discovered that the universe isn't a cold mechanical stage upon which consciousness accidentally emerged, but rather a collaborative creation, an ongoing conversation between awareness and possibility that gives birth to everything we call reality. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you carry with you a new way of seeing. The room around you, the moments flowing by, the very sense of being here and now. All of this remains as vivid and immediate as ever. But perhaps you hold it more gently now, with deeper appreciation for the extraordinary creativity required to maintain the illusion of ordinary existence. You are not a separate observer of the universe. You are the universe observing itself through the unique lens of your consciousness. Every breath you take, every thought you think, every moment of wonder you experience is part of the ongoing process by which reality comes to know and create itself. The fabric of space-time may not be real in the way we once imagined, but your participation in its emergence certainly is. Sweet dreams, fellow co-creators. Rest well in the mystery of being, knowing that even in sleep, you're helping to weave the cosmic dream from which all of existence unfolds. The cosmic dream from which all of existence unfolds.